Meeting to order. Has everybody taken a chance to look at our minutes from our last meeting? If so, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a
So
motion to
moved, Mr.
approve
Chairman.
those. Or I'll second Bill's.
Bill made the motion and Carl the second. All in favor? Did you get everybody's vote, Tracy?
Aye.
All right.
Did you get it, Tracy?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm assuming everybody was in favor?
Was Ellen in favor?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
and Kim is not on the call yet.
Kim's
Tracy.
not on the call yet. All right, we'll move on. We'll move on down to number 3, financial report. Mr. Carl?
Yeah, and it's about the same as every month. We just had some interest on the account last month, and that's it. So really no change from the prior month. Still 63,000 in the bank with about 19 of that available for us because the rest of it's going towards the signage.
Okay, we'll move on to number 4, old business. Consideration of bond resolution for Arbor Valley Real Estate Project. And I guess I'm turning that over to Stacy, right?
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a proposed bond resolution for the multifamily housing revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $22 million for the benefit of the Arbors at Villa Rica project. And the resolution is to approve the bonds and the purpose, which is approximately 192 units at the intersection of Anderson Road and Louise Lane for the rental project. And it also approves the form of the various bond documents which are attached and were sent to you previously: the loan agreement, the trust indenture, the bond purchase agreement, tax regulatory agreement, and no arbitrage certificate, the form of the preliminary official statement, and the land use restriction agreement. It also calls for authorization by the chair or vice chair, along with the secretary and assistant secretary, to execute the documents and carry out all of the actions. There's a waiver of the performance and audit requirements, and there's no personal liability. That's the one section you all might be interested in, section 16, that you have no personal liability for the bond financing. We have here with us David Williams of the law firm of Butler Snow Bond Counsel, and on the line we also have Dee Brightwell and Sam from Arbor Valley available. So if anyone has any questions, and David, would you like to say anything?
Well, just thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
David, you can speak at the podium if you'd like. Here you go.
Sorry about that. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and happy to answer any questions about these bonds. We're excited to be here presenting to you. I know it's been a long project, both with the city and the authority and the developer team. This has been in the works for quite some time. But happy to answer questions about the financing, the closing, any questions you may have.
Just the real estate exchange agreement, which is a separate thing, has no impact on the bond issue.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that since one has some outstanding items that we're still discussing, that it doesn't affect the bonds.
No, all we're approving today is the financing and the issuance of the bonds by the authority. Obviously, they have to complete that task in order for us to close.
Right.
But no.
We did approve the real estate exchange agreement at the last meeting,
Okay.
so that was approved. It has not been signed yet because we're waiting on the survey to be finalized, which is an exhibit.
Okay.
And I think the anticipated closing date is now for the transaction and bond financing is June. Is that correct, David?
That's our plan.
I missed that date. What was it?
June.
June? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So I'm assuming you get paid by the page?
That's right.
Okay. To take that many pages to draw up an agreement?
If that was the case, I need to increase the size of the font. That's good advice, Carl.
Yeah.
And luckily, Arbor Valley's paying all the
That's right.
expenses.
Yeah, this financing, most like other financings, I mean, like this, the borrower has sole responsibility for operating the project, arranging the financing, paying all the fees. And so, as Stacy mentioned earlier, this is not a debt of the authority, it's not a debt of the city. pass-through conduit.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I would just like for Mr. Brightwell to refresh my memory about approximate start and completion date.
Mute. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get off mute. Start date, as soon as we close, we will be prepared to start, we will have our permits in place at that point. Then we're looking at an 18 to 24 month construction schedule. And then we're looking at a, 3 to 6 month lease up period after that. We will start leasing approximately about 6 months to 5 months out from construction completion of the first units. And we will
Gotcha.
deliver the units in stages so that the clubhouse and first few buildings will come online. And then we will finish so that, we can start occupying, moving people in even before we're completed with the entire project. But all the infrastructure, all the amenities and all the clubhouse and all those things will be put in place. The finishes out of probably approximately building 5, 6, and 7 will happen as we start pre-leasing and leasing and moving in some of the initial people.
So obviously the water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure will be in place either now or by the time you need it.
That is correct. And that is in coordination with Tom's, with the city, with Pete and his group and how that's been going along. So that is our plan.
Now, is this going to also finance some of that expense or is that just a city expense?
No, sir. As part of our agreement with the exchange agreement, there's a few items in there, and to refresh your memory on it, we're swapping land, but we're also improving the road in front of the site. I'm forgetting the exact name. I think it's McCauley or something like that, all the way to
Lift
Lynn.
station.
And then we're also doing that infrastructure work as well. There is some offset with water and sewer tap fees, depending on what those costs are. But we're looking at estimated cost right now around $650,000 for the water costs and another $200,000 to $300,000 for the road work. So we're looking at about $1 million cost add-on for the city. I mean, we're doing for the city, and then we'll be reimbursed or be charged or offset some of that with the water and sewer tap fees, which would be significantly less than that.
I got you. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? If not,
You might entertain a motion from someone present here in the
Okay.
room to approve the bond resolution as presented.
all right, do y'all hear what Stacy said?
I'll make a motion to approve the bond resolution for Arbor Valley Real Estate Project as presented.
Got a motion from Carl, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Michael, all in favor? Is that unanimous?
Yes, and could the callers by Zoom, Bill, or do you vote in favor?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Didn't you hear my hand wave?
And then Ellen, just so we have it for the record, did Ellen vote in favor? Could you say yes or no?
Yes,
Yes.
she did.
Thank you. So all in favor, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
I'll get that.
She'll keep us, keep you guys in the loop with the things we're closing, and may have 1 or 2 more activities for you between now and then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, sir.
Thank-
You
You
too.
too.
Okay, we're going down to 4.2, update on statute.
Thanks, everyone.
Is that yours, Bill?
So Bill had requested some updates from Matt before he stepped off and Michael stepped in. So Matt did send Tom an email, and the statute is going to be a part of the LCI study, which we're conducting now, Bill. And I think Tom mentioned that on his phone call, but I know it was hard to hear him last month. And then Tom has not yet heard back from GDOT as far as the aforementioned list that you received.
Really? Well, while we're on that, I would like to make a welcome statement to Michael for coming back on the DDA. Michael, I read your comments in the paper this week about
Pick up some bacon
Punkintown Road.
in the morning.
Pardon? Can you hear me?
Dee, can you mute your phone? Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Now can Michael hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I read your comments in the paper about Punkintown Road and the expense that the city is going to have to go to get that fixed, which is going to use up most of the projected SPLOST income for the next several years. And I totally agree with what you said. Short-term expedient type actions harm you long-term. And I appreciate your frankness on that, because to give you an example, this crossing work at 78 and South Carroll was estimated to cost $25,000. That is 0.8% of what it will take to upgrade Punkintown Road. And it would generate another 25 to 30 usable parking spaces for downtown that people could use if we could get that done. I think it's vital for downtown to get that done, and I would certainly appreciate you as a member of the council and as a member of DDA to follow up on that as best you could.
I think it'd be very, very advantageous if we could look 9 years into the future, from back in 2012 when they made the decision about Punkintown Road not being part of the East Loop. If we could look that far into the future accurately, we would avoid a lot of mistakes. But, you know, hindsight, or as I said, no good deed goes unpunished. We just need to drop back and punt, find a better solution than spending our $4 million.
Well, by fixing Punkintown Road, we will at least give easy access to our friends in Paulding and Douglas County to get back and forth to home.
Yeah, but if the state would pay for it, I'd feel better.
I cannot understand a word Michael's saying.
I said if the state would pay for it, I would feel better.
Still can't hear Bill?
I can't hear him.
He said if the state would pay, he would feel better.
Well, yes, how about that? No, I don't have anything else. I just think it's time to move on those two issues, as I have for the last, 20 years maybe, something like that.
In regards to the statue, we certainly don't want to put it up somewhere and then have to redo that and put it somewhere else. We've got some changes that will probably happen due to LCI and RSVP and things like that, but we also have to deal with Norfolk Southern and make sure that the obvious place is in a train park, but the train park has stipulations that Norfolk Southern's put on it that would not allow us to put it there. So a meeting of the minds has to occur, and with Norfolk Southern, that takes a lot of work. So
3 years to get the gateways.
yeah. So we certainly don't want to put it one spot and then have to move it, because obviously the base and all of the protection, the lighting and everything will be fairly substantial. So we want to do it one time and do it right one time.
I can appreciate that, Michael. And I've been dealing with Norfolk Southern for the city of Villa Rica since the mid-1980s. And I know what a pain it can be, but it's got to be pushed by somebody and not just kind of wait for Santa Claus to come and stuff it in your stocking, so to speak. And I don't see it being pushed. So if you could possibly encourage Tom or the city engineer or yourself as a city rep to push this, the downtown would certainly appreciate it, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right, was that part of your downtown intersection upgrade too, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
All right, we'll move on down to number 4, update on electric charging station.
So Tom mentioned in the last city council meeting that he had been contacted by Georgia Power. I know this is something we've talked about in previous DDA meetings about electric charging stations. Andy had brought it up. So we're in the early stages of that. So Tom talked to the Georgia Power rep. I talked to the Georgia Power rep. The next step is him sending a proposal back to Tom and for us to review, and then Tom, myself, and he will meet. But it's in the very early stages. But this is an initiative that Georgia Power does, and that's why they reached out to Tom about potentially doing 2 spaces.
All right,
This was a subject of discussion when I was on the DDA before. Does Villa Rica get anything other than goodwill? And do we get a commission?
I think that's part of the proposal.
A second, I've been doing some research on electrical vehicles and battery fires. These are lithium-ion batteries, and the electrolyte in the battery is flammable. Do we need to involve Tom Pageant in any discussions to make sure that the local fire station is prepared or trained or equipped for a electric vehicle fire? There was a incident in France where the fire department could not get the fire out because the battery contains energy and the electrolyte is flammable, so the energy within the battery kept reigniting it. They couldn't get it out. Just a thought.
I'm sure we could, certainly bring him in on that discussion as we move forward and get a little further along in the process, for sure.
anything else on electric charging stations? Discussion of LCI study survey.
So in conjunction with the survey that we put out in January for the DDA, the LCI has now begun their own survey. And what's going to end up happening is, speaking to their representative, Donnie, will combine those 2 efforts, surveys, so they can use that information. So that information is available online if you'd like to fill out that survey as well. It's under the Community Development tab. And I don't know when the potential closing date for their survey is, but it's available now, and we're going to start getting into the focus groups and so on and so forth. So if you haven't filled it out, or you know somebody that hasn't filled it out, encourage them to fill it out, because again, we're going to combine our survey and their survey and kind of use those results to move forward with the LCI plan.
Okay, moving on to number 5, new business, report on conversation with DCA Economic Development Specialist Tara Bradshaw.
So Shannon and I had a Zoom conversation with Tara the week before last, and Michael, I know you weren't at the last meeting, but one of the things we brought up was Woodstock has a multi-use for like 7 or 8 tenants right now that is housed in a property that the DDA is leasing. Their DDA wanted to purchase that property, but the current owner is not prepared to sell it, so they're currently leasing. But they have 7 or 8 tenants within that property, and I have a handout here I can show you. So we wanted to talk to Tara about how we as a DDA can move forward purchasing real estate and doing something similar to that. We sent her some available properties that are currently available, and she's doing some research and going to give us some numbers back, because I know at the end of the day you guys want to see results and numbers and if this is profitable or not. She thought it was a tremendous idea for us because all the cities that she has helped to do this, she wasn't involved in Woodstock, she said have been extremely successful. So as my goal, as I mentioned to you guys last month, is that's what part of what the DDA does, and their responsibility is to be in the real estate market. I'm prepared to entertain talking to a real estate attorney. I've kind of reached out to somebody just to get our ducks in a row should we want to move forward with that. But the board mentioned last month that's something they were interested in doing. So I'm trying to get those things lined up so we can either have Tara come out and speak to us once she gathers all the information, and we kind of present you guys with some numbers and some more information, some hard facts. So, but we had a great hour-long conversation, very helpful, very informative. She's done a lot. She was a former city manager. Former Main Street manager. And so she has a lot of experience with economic development. So that's kind of what that conversation was.
Fox 5 had one of the tenants on the day after our meeting, I think it was.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Positive, I hope?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It lasted about 2 hours off and on with one of the
Okay.
reporters. Yeah.
Great. So I'm just trying to get the ball rolling there with that, and we had a conversation with her, and she was recommended to us from the Department of Community Affairs, who also oversees, they're kind of my second boss, right? So, great conversation, a lot of great information she gave to us, and she'll send me something in the next couple of weeks, so I'll probably be talking about this again in next month's meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to number 2, discussion of upcoming board member recommendations.
So I just wanted to bring it to you guys' attention. We have one board member, Kimberly Stovall, who's up 3/31/21. So that's something you guys need to think about for next month. I don't think we need to vote today, but maybe put that in your process. And we'll meet again before her term expires. So I don't know how you guys can talk about that. I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
What do we do? Open applications up with the city, is that right?
I know that's what I need to confirm that we need to reopen applications and have that person reapply. I know they have to.
I think that's what.
Part of the city council's vote recently was that if you had been on the board a certain amount of time, you had to redo the training, and I know everybody's done that. As far as reopening applications, I need to confirm that. And Michael, I don't remember us talking about that specifically in a city council meeting, just that they had to redo the training if they'd been on the board a certain amount of time.
Yeah, if they hadn't had training in a while, the training it actually changes the regulations, so they needed to go back through that.
Janet, do you know if Kimberly wants to continue or not?
She hasn't mentioned anything to me.
Anything else on the? If not, move it down to number 6, public comment. Look like we none there. Item for future agenda. Executive session. Do we call this meeting to end, or do we?
No, we just continue into the work session.
All right,
Just continue into work session.
okay.
So it was late this afternoon that I sent you guys out. This is the final results that we got from the survey that we did, and it was 14 questions, and this is what this piece of paper is here. So however you guys want to do it, we can go question by question, and you guys kind of come up with some goals. It's up to you. Obviously, we don't have anybody here from the public, which we were hoping for, to get some input from them.
Janet, were these numbers correct? 21 responses is all that we got?
Yes.
Or is that in it? Okay.
So I think when I came to you guys last month, we had 19.
Yep.
And as
That's
of
what I
today.
was hoping this was in addition
Right.
to what we had.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for one by one, is that right?
However you guys want to do it, question by question, or do you guys just want to read through it and create some goals? Or Michael, I know you came right in on the tail end of this, so.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff hasn't changed from when I was on Main Street Board.
Correct.
More walkability, more shops, do something about Jane's.
Yep.
Clean up things. Yes, a lot of nice comments about it being a nice place to be, but it hadn't changed a whole lot. So, and without things like the LCI and the RSVP coming together, I don't know. We need those as a basis to move forward on a lot of these things that are in here.
I think the thought process was that DDA for themselves, our board, set some goals that we can maybe accomplish this year. And maybe it's 1, maybe it's 3, you know, that's why kind of we wanted to have the work session, have some input from the public, from you guys to kind of get us some direction for 21 and figure out what we want to do as a board.
Yeah, I saw on two things on my West Wilson Street, two comments on
Yep.
about parking.
Yep.
And now the city has come and taken 3 parking spots out, put 2 handicap parking spots and a handicap ramp. So we had 3 less parking that we had a month ago, so.
All right.
With all the people on the front street coming back to West Wilson, I counted 13 cars today that work on the front street that comes to the back street to park.
And we've talked about that before. We have some repeat offenders on West Montgomery Street that continue to move around.
But the goal is to get them back where you are, isn't it? To get them off the main street.
I think it's to get them across the railroad track. We have a safe place to get
Yeah.
across the railroad track.
Yeah, they
That
Kinda hard to
means,
put it
that
across the
means
road.
we
Yeah,
need to
we
work on
can't-
that intersection, doesn't it?
Yeah, we can't quite do that because obviously the crosswalks are not great.
Did we give up on parking meters?
We did have the parking meter company come out, Michael, and it's quite expensive. And that's a decision the city's gonna have to make. You know, if we put parking meters on West Wilson, then we move the offenders to the back street, and if we put them, if they move to the back street, it just is a vicious cycle that we have to figure out what's gonna work best for us, and they're very expensive to install, and we would need, if we just did, let's say West Montgomery, I think we would need 10 parking meters. And then we as a city, do we become the parking meter? Is it gonna be on us to be the parking maid? Because we can't, I don't know that we can put that on the police department to be the parking meter, so.
Are they even enforcing the 2-hour parking on 78? Do you-
I don't know.
I would think not, since we don't really have any kind of parking enforcement. I mean, Carrollton
Right.
used to have, I guess, a meter maid. That's not a really good term, but, you know, somebody that would go around with chalk and mark tires and check it that way, but
We
to
used
my
to do
knowledge, Villa Rica doesn't have.
The only city that I know that has that sort of system is Rome. And I think their Main Street manager is also their parking attendant slash
So you need
multiple.
you need
Yeah.
a stick of chalk.
I don't know if I'm prepared or qualified to do that.
My idea with this work group, I think we need to find actionable things, projects that we can do as a DDA. Things that we can take action on this year. It can be small. It doesn't have to be taking on the railroad. It doesn't have to be finding all the answers right now. We just need small steps that can lead into the bigger things. So, I mean, sure, we need parking. We're not going to build a parking deck tomorrow. We need better crossing. We're not going to get the crossing in the next year probably, unless DOT really comes in and does what they have to do. But we've got to find actions to that. We can't be the parking police. We can't come in and tell someone, you know, hey, I need you not to park in front of a business. That should be on the individual themselves. Somebody responded in the survey that they want to have business owner parking in front of their thing. Like, if you think as a business owner you should park in a customer parking spot, you might want to reevaluate who you're trying to serve. Like, that's our biggest thing. Like, we want to give, I mean, I work with older public, but you should give your parking to the customer who you're trying to serve. You're not trying to serve yourself. If you're in your business all day, you don't need a front row parking space. So I found that interesting that someone even had that comment to that. Sure, parking's going to be an issue in any small town. We're divided by a railroad, so if you work on one side, you don't want to park on the other side. I get it. There's not good crossing through there. But how are we going to overcome that? We can't go and beg these people. We've had conversations before with people with parking issues. They apparently don't get it. But we can't be the enforcer of what businesses come in a way unless we own the property, unless we are leasing something and then we can control that and then we can say, hey, you don't park here. But for the one big business on the front street that I believe is a lot of the issue, that's on the owner of that company or the manager at that location. That's where they have to step in and be the boss and say, hey, you don't need to park here. But we've got to come up with our own way, no matter what it is, to get some resolutions to some of the problems. But it doesn't have to be to solve the parking problem.
And I
It
have
can be
reached
smaller.
out to that specific owner, and they will not return my phone call.
Yeah.
Calls, plural.
And I'm sure they get kickback from the people that work there. Why, I mean, we leased it space, I should have these 6 parking spaces in front. So, that's where it comes into the actual owner of the business has to be responsible, not a DDA or city in that aspect, unfortunately.
So with that in mind, what are some things that you think we can tackle in the next year? I mean, because it's a long list, and a lot of it's stuff that we've gone over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's we can't do anything about it during this meeting.
Yeah, correct. We know James is an issue. I mean, that's been an issue. We can't fix that. We know
Exactly.
it's tied up with issues with that. But can we work and can we give good feedback to the LCI? Can we go ahead and start implementing some of those projects? Can we work together with City Council, Michael, with your input and Matt's before? Can we come together on projects? I feel that we have 6 or 7 different authorities or boards here in town that everybody's got their own ideas and nothing's getting done because there are 6 or 7 different opinions on how it can get done. So can we come together as a whole and say, let's target this, let's look at this? Can we come together on this? We have purchasing power. Can we find a property that we lease or buy that we can then turn into revenue stream? I mean, Janet's idea that they came up with a Mercantile that was in Woodstock. That's a great idea. As long as we are controlling that and we are bringing in revenue, that gives us more power to do bigger tasks down the road.
That's one of the things we talked to Tara about as far as financing, where we would get some, potentially get seed money from the city to begin it and then get a loan or so on and so forth. And that's a lot of the stuff that she's going to bring back and talk about.
We can get low-interest loans from DCA and Georgia Cities Foundation, but their position is they will take a second position to a bank. The bank comes up with the 40% of the appraisal, DCA with 40%, and then the purchaser with 20%. And we have been through this several times. In the building where Andy is, we did that. And so their 40% at that time was about a 3% loan, which made it viable for the owner then to remodel that building and do the parking lot and everything. I don't know what it is now with interest rates where they are, but a commercial loan right now is still 6 or 7%. It is not like a mortgage loan that you buy a house with, but that lender, that bank, is going to require equity in something. It is not going to say, hey, I like everybody on the DDA, I am going to loan you $200,000. That's just not going to happen. So the city has got to be the financial guarantor on this thing. It's got to be. There's no other source of money. That's what starts it, to guarantee the DDA portion of the loan.
Then do we jump in at that point, Bill, and look at a lease and then sublease to others like they did in Woodstock? Their situation was different. They wanted to buy it, but then do we look at something that we could get that's not occupied right now and find a way to then sublease to other tenants? Do we come up with a goal of what we want to create and then find the property and then find the lease and go from there?
Well, now, the City Council of Woodstock may have guaranteed the DDA's funding, too. We don't know that right now. We know the DDA wanted to buy it. Well, the DDA would like to buy James. The DDA would like to buy that vacant lot on Wilson Street. The DDA would like to do a lot of this stuff. But you got to have the equity or the assets to back it up. You've got to. Banks are just not going to say, here, y'all are good folks, I'm going to give you money. It just doesn't work that way, Andy.
Correct. So do we start with a lease so we can collect 20% of rent and build up some equity in that facet? We have no way of bringing in income right now, zero. There's no, we get interest, right, Carl?
Yeah, and $5 a month interest.
Well, Andy, to give you an example, and I don't know precise numbers here, but say the DDA could lease Jane's Bargain Barn property. Before it could be used, you'd have to spend $200,000 or $300,000 on it.
Correct.
Now,
Now, I'm
where-
not talking her
Where
specific.
is that money coming from?
No, I'm talking something more functional that's ready to move in almost. There are 4 or 5 other vacancies right in here in downtown, just on this side of the tracks.
Where are they?
I walk past them every day. We've got where the insurance agent was right there. Yeah, where camp
Where is
was.
that? I can't hear you.
Where
Rex
camp
Camps.
was. That's vacant. You've got where the real estate agency's just using what used to be the vape shop right there. That's a short-term scenario for them, I would expect. There's 2 on the front street up there beside Jane's that are not occupied. There's still a lot of vacancies here in downtown.
Well, I have talked to everybody on both sides of the railroad track personally, the owners. And it's not nearly as easy as it needs to be. It's just not.
To do what, Bill? Sorry.
To make a real estate deal, whether it's leasing or buying.
Yeah.
You know, Jane's takes up what used to be 3 different storefronts. And so that is one. Now, what other ones are empty up there beside Jane's?
The one directly beside her, I think it used to be an herbal store, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think she's in business anymore. But I might be counting one of Jane's
The
to
other property that Andy was mentioning was the old vape shop, which is on the corner of Main Street.
Yep.
That building is currently empty.
Which is Rex.
Yeah, that belongs to Rex.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we need to talk to Rex.
Absolutely. What about the 2 backsides of both Uncorked and Rex's building? Both of those look to be just storage. Are those viable options? Could we come up with some way on the backside where we could create more parking along the back street there?
You mean the basement where Uncorked is?
Correct. That building and the next building where Rex's building is as well. They're just a bunch of textile machines down in the bottom of Rex's.
Well, tell you what, Andy, why don't you go talk to Rex?
I don't have a problem talking to anyone. I mean, I've
I have talked to Rex before. Why don't you try it?
I will see what I can do, Bill. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, it's the worst he's going to say is no. So
Yep, well, look, he's already told me no, so if you can convince anybody that they need to work with the DDA to get something done, I am all for you, and I will certainly listen to you as best I can personally. But these things are not nearly as easy as they should be. It's just not.
correct. But if we don't try, we don't know, right?
I've only been trying 35 years, Andy.
So are y'all wanting to, as Andy mentioned, set some initiatives for today, tonight, so that we can start working on some stuff for 21? Obviously with COVID, you know, again, we need that crystal ball, but hopefully we can get some things done, even if it's on the smaller scale.
I saw in a survey, I saw a couple comments, different comments about facade grants and things like that. Is that something we can push harder? I keep thinking back to how Uncorked changed almost overnight because they redid the front of their store. So if there are people out there that are interested between Main Street's grants and DDA grants, is that something we could push a little harder?
And
Well-
you've got the rural zone.
Right, we do have the Rural Zone, which is was a good asset, and we're certainly trying to push that now. The problem with Facade is we don't have a lot of money in the
That's
bank.
right.
And the problem with the Main Street grants is we've already had a couple of people inquire about that. We are not producing events, therefore we're not producing revenue. Therefore, we don't have the money right now. We only were able to have 3 events last year, and those didn't generate revenue, or not enough to turn around. What we're hearing, we had a 2021 State of the Program for Main Streets across the state of Georgia with the DCA, and they are strongly suggesting that we reserve funds, what funds we have.
Conserve cash.
Correct, because we don't know what 21 looks like either. And I haven't released an event schedule because we don't know what's happening. So I would love to, because the year before we were able to give out almost $20,000, which is amazing. And that was because we were able to generate revenue from things. So I would hope that we could at some point this year, but it's all going to come down for Main Street specifically if we're able to have some events and generate some money.
Janet, do we know the city's stance on food trucks? Has that changed? Is that
Still Mondays.
okay? So could we look at doing that? Can we create an event around that where it's not us putting it on? It's food trucks. We create a parking lot that can be accessed and be there.
We could create, through the permitting office, a special event permit. I'll have to talk to Tom about that. But right now, obviously, it specifically, and I think when that whole food truck thing came into fruition, it was based upon the feedback from the restaurants of, we're closed on Mondays, we don't have a problem with it. Their concern obviously is it taking revenue away from them if we're doing it on a day that Friday, Saturday specifically. So it's something we certainly can talk about. We would just have to do some sort of special event permit and set it up in an area, like you said, that's kind of have them spread out and pick a day.
And
You know.
Chattanooga is open on Monday now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're not open on Saturday.
yeah.
Right.
Correct. But yesterday, got back into town and literally 2 restaurants in downtown were open.
Right.
And, that's tough. That's a travel day. When people are passing through, they're looking for a restaurant. No, I'm not going to go to a restaurant and say, sorry, we need you to be open.
Right.
That's their decision. They base it on their numbers, but we need some more draw. This town on Sunday is very quiet.
Right.
We need some more involvement.
Right.
But I think food trucks, if we created an event, even if we did it like Douglasville did a couple of years ago, they did, was it Wednesday or Thursday night? I can't remember which night of the week, but it was great. They had a band out there playing, people went. I mean, there were hundreds of people that went. And those type of events are not tying up the physical location of the mill. Sure, you've got set up and clean up little things like that, but you get your corporate sponsors to do it. you
Right.
know?
Well, that's another thing. Speaking of sponsorships, we're going to be down for sponsorship money this year.
Yep.
We have our major sponsor will not be participating this year just because of the industry they're in. So that's another thing that was also down in 20 was the amount of sponsorships that we received. Luckily I've secured sponsorships for our leadership luncheon, but they don't want to do that when their revenue, they don't know what's going to happen either, and they don't want to give that money out and not be able to make their money back. So that's another thing. It's unfortunately, I keep saying it, but we need that crystal ball, and so do these businesses, and so do these big businesses, because they don't know from month to month what kind of revenue they're going to generate. So that's another thing that was down also in 20 was sponsorship.
Michael, this might be to you some a little, but with the LCI, they came out with a great little video showing different things. Several of the comments in the survey were about making Temple a one-way. Is that on the city? Who's that on? Who makes those decisions?
That's pretty much on the city. I mean,
Okay.
on the city council. I mean, the city staff will bring a recommendation to the city council, but the city council will have to approve that.
I mean,
And
those are the.
I think, you know, they're ready to consider something like that, but they would rather see the larger plan fleshed out so that we don't do this piecemeal. We go through it and we've got a step-by-step process, ready to go.
Correct, but we've been working on a master plan for how many years? And I know, it takes time, progress takes time, but making a one-way street, that's an improvement regardless if the master plan takes place, right? I mean, what harm is there in making that a one-way street? I watch sitting out, eating Mexican on the deck there, and you have to stop and let one car go by and another car then pass. You can't drive two cars at a time down there. What is the purpose of that?
We tried this a few years ago.
I think
and
it's one of
now,
the-
now I'm going to sound like Bill. We tried this a while back, and we were close to it and had some very strong objections by certain people.
Yeah, down at the end, the
One of them
back,
you're
yes.
going to talk to. So maybe you can have that conversation with him as well.
I remember that the vape shop was going to become a bicycle shop.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
I
so,
think the city council is waiting to have recommendations from professionals that do this kind of thing, that said, this is the right decision. So that if the city council ignores a prominent businessman, they've got something to lean up against to say, you know, that it was the right decision based on all of these professionals.
I mean, I'm not saying we just need to go out and just repaint the town, but I'm just saying, like, those little small steps, can those not be considered before we wait for this master plan that'll take 10 years to come into financing and everything else? Like, I'm with Bill, we need a safe railroad crossing regardless if we have any kind of master plan or anything. We've got to have a safe way to get across the railroad tracks, plain and simple.
I think the one that was in, that they modeled, didn't that cost over $1 million?
What, the one that was raised? Oh, yeah. But, I mean, even if that were in place, do you not still need a ground level crossing? Say the elevator goes out. Where are you getting a wheelchair across? Where are you getting a baby stroller across? So it doesn't have to be just picture perfect to the master plan. A safe crossing across the railroad tracks is still going to benefit this town, no matter if we're waiting 10 years for a master plan or not.
Even if we paid for it, it may take 10 years to get Norfolk Southern to agree.
That's right.
Just remember that Norfolk Southern agreed to do the upgrade on that intersection for $25,000. A previous Villa Rica City administration says, ooh, that's way too much, we're not going to do it. I just thought I would bring that up one more time.
And then after we failed to close Cheeve Street, they threw a hissy fit.
Most people have to deal with one or entity. We get to deal with both. So guys, give me some feedback on kind of maybe some, like I mentioned, some smaller things that you guys can foresee us potentially doing maybe this year. Whether it's something as simple as pressure washing sidewalks, you know, buildings.
What is the update on Butterballs?
They've gutted it,
Yeah.
and, you know, that's where we're at. I think they're just trying to figure out what's better to leave as is and add on to, or tear it down and start over.
and
One of these days, it's going to turn into a pumpkin, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's really a major thing that we can do, because, I mean, we're getting to the point now where we've got to make a decision what we do with that.
A building.
And if we tear it down and start over, we can do that within a year.
Yes, and with the
Apparently,
city-
the city's already put the funds out for it, reserved the funds for
yeah,
it.
city council did approve $500,000
Yeah.
in the 21 budget to start working on that. My understanding is that we probably could get it done with that amount of money, but
It's got a new roof
I'm not
on
the
it.
expert.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then we could, you know, put like the original plan where half of it was going to be for merchants. We could do something like what you were talking about that they have at Woodstock. Rent out spaces in there and have the Main Street office and part of it as well.
Because our thought process, Shannon and I were talking after we're talking to Tara, I think a great thing for us would, you know, put a coffee shop, a deli, a bakery all in there and letting them kind of it's not a huge space, let's face it. And Ms. Sharon would, potentially have the welcome center on the covered section. So it's not a huge place, but, if we had a deli in there, we had a, potentially a Jerry's, the burger place, and, a bakery and so on and so forth, coffee, I think that would be a huge revenue builder for us as far as generating people, because we've heard coffee shop for I don't know how many years now.
Absolutely. But could that be where we go and we partner with the city? Bill, that gets us our funding or backing, and then can we go in and can we make it better than what the city set aside at the 500? I mean, can we look at it like that? Can we pick a goal and say, hey, this is viable, we have some funding already there, can we move forward with that?
I mean, our biggest issue is always money. They've already set the money aside, so somehow we got to get this thing moving. And I think that's should be our number one project to work on, because it's something that's been in the works for a long time. It's a big, ugly spot of the city that can be fixed, and so we're making the city look better. We start making some money off of it. We actually get something done we've been working on for years.
Right.
And, like I said, the money's the biggest issue, and they've already put the money aside, so we should be moving on that.
The biggest decision to make is restoration or demolition. I mean, that's the first thing we have to decide.
And, I mean, they've demolished so much of it already, that they should be able to make that decision by now.
It's got a great look. It's got a good idea behind it, but yeah, I mean, you got to make the right decision on, is it worth pouring more into it? But you got a new roof on it.
right.
You've already gutted it half. I mean, half the battle's already done. I like that idea, Carl.
Yep. So what is the holdup on that? Where's Mr. Barber?
And it's got a brand new roof on it too.
Yep.
Don't forget that.
What is the holdup on that right now, Janet? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay. Can we get Mr. Barber at our next meeting?
Sure.
Can we put that down as one of our goals for this year, maybe? Is that something
I'm good with
everybody
that.
kind of has good feedback on?
And so what we can do on our part is bug Mr. Barber until something finally gets moving.
I think we ask him about it every time he's here, though.
And this might be something where we can come in with some historic money as well. I mean, as far as the funding, could we not, because that's still a historic building, is it, I mean, does that qualify? It's over, is it 60 years?
I don't know if it goes down that far, but I can check with
I
Ron.
think it does.
And see.
I think it
does.
should qualify.
It's been there since the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that gets your standard met for that. So could we look into that for some funding options for it?
I will definitely talk to Ron, who's our historic preservation guru and our planning and zoning.
What are you talking about? Since the 50s? I couldn't hear you.
Butterballs.
Butterballs, how long has it been here, Bill?
Oh,
You're about as old as it.
Butterballs goes back to the late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
Okay, it should be historic then.
About as old as you, isn't it, Bill?
Pardon?
I said it's about as old as you are.
It was the first gasoline station between Birmingham and Atlanta on the newly paved US 78,
Wow.
Yeah.
And see,
to give you an idea.
that's worth saving right
Yeah,
there.
it's historic, yep.
Yep.
So that's the number one priority for the year then.
I think it's viable. I like Carl's idea because we got the money at least set aside. So I say let's see what we can do with it.
Anything else?
Y'all want to start there and
I mean,
work
yeah,
your way down?
I think the rest all, I mean, I'm with Michael. It all kind of ties into the other. We know the biggest thing on the list from everybody is already not an option at the moment. So I don't see a problem with that.
And the person from Mirror Lake that filled out this survey, I mean, they're looking at the connector. There's nothing else we can do about that, so.
Correct.
Golf cart accessibility.
Yeah, that was his answer to every question.
Yeah. Ellen, do you have any feedback or input from the survey? Do you have any feedback or input?
Here.
What about completing the signage?
Yeah, I had a question on that too.
Yeah, we're in the same boat there. We have a property owner who will not respond to our requests or reaching out. The other one is the Baptist Church, which is a predominantly elderly community, and they have not been in attendance due to COVID. I think they had a couple of people in the church to get it, and they have not met since, and that will take, and I think it's maybe 65 people that are members of that church. Will take a vote from all of them to move forward with that. And I have been in constant contact with David, who's the minister there, and that's, that's where we're at with that one. The other two we have.
Any more questions, comments? Did I hear a motion?
So moved.
Yeah, I make a motion that we close out our work session and adjourn the meeting.
All right, I think we had a second from Bill. All in favor? I think that's unanimous.
Aye.
Okay, we got you, Bill.
Thank y'all for taking the extra time.
Thank you, Janet, for what you do.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you all.